Now, I've talked a lot on this channel about different scales and positions on the neck, but there are 3 patterns I use in pretty much every solo I play. So in this video, I want to share with you not only what those patterns are, but how I bring them to life to get pentatonic, melodic and blues sounds. So the first pattern I use absolutely all the time, more than any other, is the good old first position minor pentatonic, like here in A minor, starting at the 5th fret on the low E, we get 5, 8, and then 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, and 5, 8. Now, I guess pretty much everyone knows that shape already, but there's some really important things to take account of here in terms of how we put this into practice. Firstly, the track I'm using in this video is actually in the key of C major, so why am I using the A minor pentatonic? Well, that's because C major and A minor are known as relative minor and major keys, so they have exactly the same notes. So when we look at this pattern here, the first note here, 5th fret on the low E, tells us which minor key it works over, so A minor, and the second note here, 8th fret on the low E, tells us which major key it works over, so C major, and all we need to do to invoke the sound of the minor or major feel from this scale is just target those root notes. So for example, we've got an A here at the 7th fret on the D string. If I target that, it sounds dark and minor-y. We've got a C here, 5th fret on the G string. If I target that, it sounds brighter and major-y. So simple as that, this same shape works for both minor and major. Secondly, when I'm using this shape, I'm not just thinking purely pentatonic, I'm also using it to access all the notes from the full major scale to give a more melodic sound. So in the case of C major pentatonic, the notes we're missing from the full major scale are an F and a B, so let's see where we can find those in and around this shape. So we've got an F here at the 6th fret on the B string. Now the plain pentatonic sound can be a little bit bland, but adding that F, immediately you get a much more melodic vibe, that kind of beautiful sus4 thing coming in there. So really adds a lot to the feel as you're playing. Then we also want to add a B, and there's a couple of places that work really well here. Firstly, 4th fret on the G string is a really nice one to add in. I like to play that one and give it the half step bend up, back to the C, and resolve that maybe to an A there like that. Couple of little slides bring it to life. And also we've got a B here, 7th fret on the high E, adding that one in also brings in a lot more melodic flavour. Solo, you saw me start with a big bend on this F here at the 6th fret, resolving it down, really outlining that melodic flavour right from the start. Then I brought in the bend on this 4th fret of the B string for the B there, and then some more classic pentatonic ideas coming in, and then coming up to use this B here at the 7th fret as well. So bringing in those extra notes really adds to the feel of this solo. Then moving on, the second pattern I use absolutely all the time is the 2+3 diagonal pentatonic. Now this one moves diagonally up the neck, but it's really simple because it's just 2 notes on one string followed by 3 notes on the next string. So starting down here at the 3rd fret on the low E, we get 3 and 5, a G and an A. So that's 2 notes on the first string, and then on the next string, 3 notes, 3, 5, and slide up to 7, C, D and E. Now these 5 notes are the complete C major or A minor pentatonic there, and this is a really nice simple shape which then just repeats across the neck. So that's our basic shape. Then up to 5th fret on the D string, you see right under our fingers we get exactly the same again. So 5 and 7 on the D, followed by 5, 7 and 9 on the G. Then we can move up again. This time we're starting at the 8th on the B and the exact same pattern. So 2 notes there and then 3 notes on the next string. Put that all together and we get a nice scale that moves across the neck and helps us transition around. Now this shape has a couple of really important functions for me. Firstly, just travel across the neck, either by just blasting up through the scale like that, or playing the same lick in multiple positions works really well to get around. So I could combine licks like that and move through the different positions across the neck in that way. But also this shape is great for giving really easy access to the blue note to add a little bit of blues flavour to our pentatonic soloing. So down here, 3, 5, 3, 5, 7, that was our pentatonic scale. We can just add in a chromatic note in between the last 2. So here, an E flat at the 6th fret. So now we've got 3, 5, 3, 5, 6, 7. And this note here at the 6th fret, this E flat, is the blue note in the key of C major or A minor, and adding it in is instant blues vibes. Of course we can do that in any of the 3 positions we learn this shape in. And there we have it. Now, adding in that blue note as a big long note like that might be too much in a lot more kind of rock or melodic kind of soloing situations. So one thing I really like to do is just glance off it to the note below, a little slide like that, or maybe flick on and off like that. Just adds that little touch of blues into it. And in my solo you saw me using this approach with these little flicks to work my way down the scale. And then the big run up the scale at the end to bring me back up the neck. The third shape I use all the time is something I call the blues chord scale. So here we've got a C bar chord at the 8th fret. Let's take off our little finger to make it a more bluesier sounding C7, and then the second finger on the G string we can play a little hammer on there to make it even bluesier again. And this really is the basis for our scale shape. So let's zone in on just the top 4 strings here. We've got this bar at the 8th fret on the D, G, B and high E strings. So we can use all those notes there, and then also this note here, 9th fret on the G string that we saw with our little hammer on, makes that transition from minor to major, so it's really important here. And then we've also got a bar that we can use here at the 10th fret on those same strings, D, G, B and high E. Now all these notes really come from the major scale, so these are our chord tones, these are additional major scale notes which are going to complement those chord tones and make kind of a bright sound. So bright but bluesy at the same time, right? And this works great with lots of double stops and chord type sounds as well that you can get from this. Then to complete our shape we can also add in these 3 notes, G, B and high E strings at the 11th fret. And this gives us 3 blue notes that we can use when we want a really dark blues sound. See, reaching out to that gives us that much darker flavour. So in all we've got this bar here, 8th fret, this little hammer on to the 9th fret just on the G string, bar at the 10th fret, and then just on the top 3 strings, bar at the 11th fret. Now we could play that as if it was a scale like that. It doesn't really function as a scale in that way, but just gives us access to lots of notes that work well together in this context. so some things I did in my solo to bring this to life. Firstly, these notes at the 11th fret, we can target them by bending up from the 10th fret. You can do it on any of them, but you saw me doing it on the B string. A nice kind of subtle way to get those blue notes. You also saw me doing a really classic blues move with bending. So full step bend up with this note at the 11th fret, then half step at the 10th, bending back down and resolving to this note, the root note of the 8th of our C. Something like that always works great. Then also, double stops are really important here. And you saw me doing something like so 10 and 10 on the G and B strings together, and then down to 8 and 8 with the hammer on to 9 just on the G string, and then 10 on the D string. And just that round and round. But then also we can double stop up to the blue notes as well at the 11th fret for a darker sound, and you saw me do a bit of that. And then lastly, a bit of that on the top two strings, sliding those two notes from 8 to 10 and back down again. So loads of little things you can do here to bring this to life with bends and double stops and so on.